Welcome to Romera Records virtual cast. Today we have on Tristan. How's it going, man?
Thanks for having me, Jackson.
So, found you from Podmatch, just like a lot of other podcasts I've been doing, and it's been going pretty well from there. Have you been on Podmatch for a while?
I think it's been a couple of years, or maybe even longer, like 3 years. And I've been on a bunch of podcasts through Podmatch. It's quite good.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, yeah, I guess just kind of get into who you are, what you do, and like how you got started.
Yeah, sure. So as you might hear, I'm a Frenchman. I live in Spain, where I moved a few years ago after maybe too many years in London, where I was working in strategy and finance. It was good fun. Then a few years ago, I founded a couple of businesses, one around consulting and advisory to companies mainly across Europe on strategy. So helping companies to grow or restructure, go through changes. So helping manage this kind of projects and advising teams on how to do it. So business strategy stuff, and then also in the media business where I have I run a small media on fintech called Fintech Review, and I'm also co-founder of a media in the equestrian space, so horse riding competition. So we cover all that stuff in Spain. So let's say to summarize, I'm an entrepreneur in various things, um, and I kind of stumbled across entrepreneurship after many years in corporate. So the adaptation was quite brutal, but it's been quite fun since then.
So you said that you were in London and then now you're in Spain,
Yeah. I was in London 6 years, and now I've been in Spain almost four.
but you're French though, right?
Yeah. Well, I left France 10 years ago, and I'm not going back. I'm good. I'm very good in Spain.
So what drew you to London?
Uh, well, I was just out of business school, and I wanted to work in finance. And this was before Brexit, so London was very much the place to be if you wanted to work in banking and finance. So I went there, like many of my fellow classmates, to get a job. And now it's not the case. Now it's not the number one, and I mean, it's still a big financial place, but you can do a lot of things in Paris or Amsterdam or Frankfurt. But back then, I talk like I'm a very old person, but 10 years ago, London was a place to be for banking, so that's why I went there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with, I'm in the US and currently living in Tennessee, but it's it's always interesting learning about different countries' business culture because
Mm.
usually Americans when we're learning about other countries' culture, it's like food, what do people do in their fun time, stuff like that, but not so much your business culture. So that's an interesting topic I would actually really like to cover is like your journey into starting the companies that you did and being an entrepreneur in different countries. That's a very interesting topic because I don't know I guess how easy the process is to even start a business in different countries. So what was it like doing, as just creating a business in where you're at?
Um, so yeah, I mean, on the topic of business culture, it's actually something that fascinates me quite a lot as well. My master thesis was on business culture, like different business cultures in banking in Middle East, France, and the UK. So this was my master thesis. Obviously, it's been a while that I find it quite interesting. And yeah, I mean, the US is quite a big, it's quite a big country in Europe. It's more, let's say, it's more complex because then you go from France to Spain, and the the language will be different, and the business culture will be slightly different. And then you cross the channel between France and the UK, and then suddenly it's also different. So it's obviously there are lots of similarities around some topics, but also lots of different things. Um, and obviously, going into a new country and starting a business is more complicated than if you're staying where you are. But I work mostly internationally, so which makes it easier. So I started my business in Spain, but working mostly across France, UK, and Germany, which means that it it kind of was easier because I didn't come to the country and launch a local business. This would have been much harder. Um, but I actually founded the business as a well, from here as a platform to do things elsewhere. Um, but obviously the difficulties is always to get around the legal system, how it works, and as I said, like there are similarities. A limited company is a limited company everywhere. It has a different name, but the principles are the same. Um, you just need to understand exactly how it works in that country. But I've done like projects in different countries, and I've been to like a few, and it's always more or less the same. Italy, France, Germany, the US, the UK, the Netherlands. It's always kind of the same. But yeah, no, entrepreneurship has been fun, and obviously, I kind of did everything at the same time. So I left the UK, went to Spain, and decided, okay, it's time to be an entrepreneur. So started the business, and I thought, you know what? Since I'm doing a big change, changing country, I might as well do everything at the same time.
Mm.
So that it's brutal for a number of reasons. Um, and and yeah, I mean, the first few months were about adapting to the new life, and suddenly there are not plenty of people running around doing everything, and you have to do everything. So, but it's much more rewarding. The first $1,000 that you make as an entrepreneur, you feel like you've made a million. Um, so that was good fun. And then all the challenges about trying to scale. But after almost 4 years now, I felt it was the right choice to go that route. And I don't see myself going back now.
So when you were in the UK and you said you had moved there because you thought, that would be a good place to have your business or just to be in that business culture and that kind of era, what
Hmm.
what really, I guess, clicked in your head while you were there that it was, hey, it's time to go.
Yeah, so I moved there because I always wanted to work in banking. That's why I went to business school, and then I was like, work in banking, like this image of, well, instead of Wall Street was the city of London, but kind of the same. I had this image. I'm gonna be in a suit every day, getting my coffee to go and arriving at the office and making some money, which was fun for a little while. And then at some point, for me, the click was you look at your boss and then you look at the boss of your boss and you're like, is this the life I want in 10, 15 years? Uh, and then you decide yes or no. And for me, it was, no, it doesn't look very appealing. You earn more, but then the life kind of looks like it sucks. So that's when I decided that Uh, and also because London is a good place, but I think it was the best place for me when I was in my 20s because you don't care about uh, being in having a big flat. You don't care about, having a family. I don't know. You don't care about many things. And then as you approach 30, you're starting to think, oh, maybe I would like to live in a bigger flat and have kids. And then everything adds up in the London cost of living. and then you're like, oh fuck, like I'm never gonna make enough to sustain this lifestyle. Uh, so I guess it was age and also looking at my peers, and then I realized that it was time to move on from that space. And I think, I mean, I don't know if it's the same for big cities like New York in the US, but London is very much lots of people moving there when they're in their 20s. And as you turn 30, people have a choice. They either commit fully and they're like, I'll make it 100%, or they go back from where they come from, or they go to another place. And for me, I've seen all my friends, they were two categories and no in between.
Mhm.
Uh, and everybody split at that point.
That that's something that I actually just saw a YouTube video on yesterday. It was talking about the cities in America that are shrinking and then the cities that are booming. And it's literally like the middle of the US is shrinking, and then all the outside, so the coastline of the US, all the warm areas, so like California, Florida, Texas, those areas are their population is booming. And I would say one is because the weather is great. And then two, also people will retire. So when a lot of they call it the baby boomers is the generation that is starting to retire. They're in like their 60s. They're going to warmer climates. They're going to places that have like relaxed type areas. So Florida, Georgia, Alabama, these states in the US that have more retiring type environment. So I do believe what you're saying is true for the US as well. Like people aren't moving to New York City to retire. You know, they're they
Mm,
if you're young and you're trying to make it, you know, on Wall Street or something like that, you move to a hustle and bustle type city. But then when you're older and you're like, you know, I'm kind of done with all this kind of stuff. You know, I just want to have a job or just, you know, live with my family and stuff like that, then you move to a different area that has maybe a lower cost of living and, you know, maybe a lower median household price so that you can just have an affordable life that's more relaxed than such a hustle type culture. So I think it's true for the US as well.
mm. Yes, I think, I mean, you do need to go to the big city to get the right experience because we see where I am now. I couldn't work on the stuff I work on now and I've built my businesses if I hadn't been to London in the first place. So I do think it's necessary because you can't just go somewhere and say, hey, like give me all the money, I have no experience. So I do think that it's valuable. And yeah, I think it makes sense that people do this cycle. And I guess it's not new. Maybe it accelerates a bit, as you see, with people retiring and now one more remote work. Um, like digital nomads or whatever they call, but people working remote. I mean, I work 90% of the time, I work with clients that are far away and I work remote. And I do see them every now and then, but I don't have to. And I do think that this will have a big impact on cities, these big cities that um, have become just unaffordable for a lot of people. And even with good jobs, when you're saying that the flat I'm in, if I wanted to buy it in London, would cost me like £4 million, and I didn't buy it for 4 millions where I am, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's just what it is. Like some big cities have become just bloated.
Yeah, inhabitable is is a good
Yeah.
word for some of those cities because they just make it so expensive to live there, and some people are just willing to pay it because they like the experience. They like the ability to have everything within, you know, arm's reach. So that's, if that's for you, okay, cool. But other people have different objectives for what they're trying to do. As you explained, like you went to London to have that experience of being around people who were in the financial state, but then you decided to move to Spain. So when you did make the move, you make the jump to go to Spain. What was actually before you answer that, you're French and you live in UK. What your English is good. Yeah, it's
Mm.
not like you don't have like a super thick accent, but I can tell that you're French. What I know that a lot of European countries do speak English. They're very lenient on that for all of our Americans that like to travel over there. So, did you learn English while you were in France, or did you like pick it up while you were in the UK?
So actually, as a child, or no, as a child, a young teenager, I spent 4 years in Middle East. I lived in Jordan from 10 to 14. Um, so I was living and breathing in English, which meant that I had kind of a head start. Um, and
Jordan,
then, yeah, in Jordan. And
their
then,
native language is English, or like
no, it's just like everybody, it's either the life is in Arabic or in English. And for me, life was in English. And then after that, well, you study English in school, and then I went to business school in studying in English, also studied a bit in the Netherlands. Um, so by the time I moved to the UK, I was already very much speaking English. I think that the level of English is not the best in in most places. Well, in let's say the Latin countries, so Spain, France, Italy, the level of English tends to be approximate. It's better in Germany, Netherlands, and then the Nordic countries. Also in Portugal, they speak good English.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I had started earlier than most, like intensive English. So hence why I speak well now.
Yeah, that's something I've always found interesting is because I've never been to Europe. I've only been to outside of the US. I've been to Canada and I've been to Ecuador in South America. But um, when I go to Europe eventually, I have always found that very interesting is you have so many actually rich cultures in Europe because America, we're just a bunch of um, just different breeds of people. There's so many different cultures, and there's no real, like, we're mutts. There's no real, I'm from this spot. If you live in Norway, your whole family's probably from Norway. Like,
Hmm.
there's more people who are just, from there. So you have all these different languages that you could possibly be influenced with in Europe. So that's I was just very intrigued by how you got the different languages. So now in Spain, are you picking up Spanish?
Yeah, I already spoke Spanish, and obviously now I speak it more. And around where I am, there is another language that is somewhere in between French and Spanish called Catalan,
Hmm.
uh, which I don't speak, but I can understand because since I speak French and I speak Spanish. Um, I think, well, naturally in Europe, most people are, well, except for the British, most people are multilingual because most people would be able to speak a bit in English. Some of them are quite fluent. And then in some countries where there are several languages, so for instance, this part, people will speak Spanish and Catalan by default, and then probably English, and then some will speak, well, so most people would speak two, three, or four languages. Um, and it's just the nature of the, and then if you live, I don't know, if you're Spanish living close to frontier with France, most probably you speak French as well, and likewise. So it's well, it's obviously interesting because, well, compared to when I went to the US in just before COVID in 2019, there is a rich history, but it doesn't go as far. Like most places here, you would have buildings are older than the US. So it's uh it's been it's an old continent and with deep history and then very local stuff that have developed over many years, and people also very proud of like keeping their own little thing. As I said, within Spain, you even have different languages. You have Spanish as a main language, but then you have Basque in the Basque Country, you have Catalan, and then also Catalan is not the same if you go to Barcelona, which is 2 hours away from here,
Mm.
then in Valencia, it will be a slightly different version. So it's a bit like English in the US and English in Canada would be slightly different. Uh, but it makes it interesting to have deep culture and also what you were mentioning, the impact on business. This is also what I find interesting when I work on cross-border projects. For instance, I worked with a Spanish company that was making acquisitions in France and the Netherlands and Italy, and each of the deals were very different because in front there were people from these countries with very different culture and language and habits, and that impacts a lot the way you can work together.
Yeah, and that's another thing that is, I would say, an advantage in America. We're United States, so every state has their own, rules, laws, regulations, and stuff like that. But we all use the same currency,
Mm.
and it's, same language as well. So, like, I could drive from Florida all the way up to New York, and my money's still good. It's still the same currency rate. Everybody's still speaking the same language, all that kind of stuff. But in Europe, everything can be different. Like you have
Mm.
different currencies over there. People are speaking different languages. So it can be an advantage and a disadvantage. I could see both cases. How have you kind of navigated having to deal with the different things you were talking about, having to make the different deals in the different countries? How's that been?
So, I mean, we do have the same currency across most countries. We have the euro across most countries except Switzerland and the UK, but why is it the same currency? Then the banking systems will be different, but your credit card would work. If you have a Spanish card, it would work in France, for instance. But but then the legal systems are different and the language is different. Um, and I mean, to navigate doing this kind of projects is just you need to learn and study a bit the terrain, but would be not so, I mean, except for the language, would be not so dissimilar than if you're in Florida, you want to acquire a company in Texas, and then different regulations on several things and different business register and this kind of stuff. So in that sense, it's not so dissimilar. But then the layer that is on top is the fact that the language will be different and then the legal system will be different. Um, so which creates a complexity whenever you want to do something. Um, so, for instance, the Spanish company was quite clear for the acquisition in France how it was going to run. Acquisition in Italy was a bit funkier, and it took much longer than expected because there were some legal stuff that we didn't plan for. Um, and then the deal in the Netherlands kind of didn't work because the cultural difference was just too stark. Is that in in the Netherlands for the Dutch, it is custom to say what you think. So there is kind of this culture of no filter. And for them, they think that this is the right way to do things, is that if I don't like you, I say, hey, I don't like you. And this is how they feel you should do things, even in the business world. And the problem when you have people on the other end that don't think that way and get offended because things are being done in that way, this can create tension. Um, and so this is, I mean, the reality of the business world is that it's not just numbers and nice presentations. You have people, and then people need to get along, and people need to believe each other, trust, and all that good stuff that will make a deal happen or not. But that's also what I find particularly interesting working across cultures and countries.
So again, on top of you talking about the Netherlands being that way, another funny thing is just literally humor. Like
Mm.
you might be trying to make a joke about something, and they might not, they might not find it funny, or vice versa. They might be joking about something, you might not find it funny. So just that and alone, just the communication, body language, all these types of things that help you make a good business deal might be hurtful in one place, but helpful in another. So you kind of have to understand the cultures in that way so that you're doing proper etiquette talking to different kinds of people.
Mm. No, exactly. I think that it's. I was talking yesterday with a company about international expansion, and I was saying there are many things to take into account, from language to culture to like market dynamics, who's playing. But yeah, like definitely in terms of how do things work, do you think that you're going to be able to adapt? Um, and it's trying to be as local as possible. And obviously, for instance, you're an American company, you're coming to Spain. Well, chances are you're going to have to adapt a bit depending on the sector you're going into. It's going to be easy or not. You know, you're coming food sector, you're doomed, right? That you're coming with technology, maybe actually, you have an advantage, or maybe it's easier just to, translate the software and then, sell it to companies. So it depends very much in the sector. Some are much easier to get into from an international perspective. Some are quite hard.
So yeah, so you enlightened me about the euro, and then I think you said Switzerland, they've got their
Mm.
currencies and different things. So that's all governed, is it by the EU? Is that what that is?
So you have two things. So you have the EU, which is 27 countries, and then the common currency is across most countries. I'm not trying to remember exactly how many, but it's across most countries. So Switzerland is not in the EU, so they're staying inside, but most countries are. So within the EU, you have kind of like the goods and services can move freely, a bit like the United States, basically for goods and services. And then there is the same currency in many countries, again, to facilitate trade. So Spain, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Belgium, a lot of countries have the same currency. Um, and it's basically what happened is that it was initially a free trade agreement between all these countries, and then which started uh, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and then over time it evolved, and then about 20 years ago we decided to introduce the same currency in order to facilitate trade between these countries, and a few countries opted not to. So the UK opted not to. Uh, I think that Sweden as well, like a few countries decided to keep their currencies, but most countries decided to adopt the euro. Um, and it's working quite well because in the end, uh, yeah, as I said, it's much easier when I work with a company in France, they pay me in euros. It's the same, systems and banking rails. You don't have any currency issues, or you don't have to translate anything. So it's working quite well.
So, as far as education wise, do you feel like it's easy to access any kind of knowledge or just straight information that helps you to do what you want to do as far as in your business?
Um, I think what's interesting right now is that you have all the information and the education that you want uh, available. Just go on Google and ChatGPT and you can learn anything and everything. But at the same time, I think that there is an overflow. There is too much information. And then, what I notice, because see, I do business mentoring and coaching of companies. Um, so technically, these entrepreneurs, they don't need me. And same for consulting. They don't need me to come and tell them what to do. The information is out there. But it's what you make with the information. And I think this is why it's interesting right now, because it's never been that easy to start a business, to learn any skill you want. But are you actually accessing the right information? Are you understanding it well? Are you applying the concepts in the right manner? Um, and so yeah, I think at the same time the information is out there, but it's challenging to package it in a very understandable way. Um, and that's why I think people still go and do degrees, even though technically you go to university, you're not going to learn more than, spending a few hours on YouTube, but you still go because it's more structured and you know what you need to do and what you need to learn. And also they give you a degree which kind of validates that you have the skills. Um, and I think this is where, what is the value of a degree? Is it what you learn, or is it actually just that they validate that you learn stuff? And it's still relevant now, even though technically you have access to everything that they will tell you.
Yeah, that's something that I've been a huge proponent of for when it comes to schooling, because I actually have like 3 degrees. Two of them are bachelor's and one's an associate's. But I'm ironically, I'm not huge into going to school for people who want to acquire skills. I think experience is way better than education because I have a bachelor's degree in business management and then also have a bachelor's degree in music business, so two different businesses degrees. But there are people who know more about business than I do who don't have a degree at all. And it's because
Mm.
they've just been in business for so long. They've been doing it. They've been having the experience of it. So I think that it's far more important to get the experience and get your hands dirty by doing the work than it is to just go to school. So it's important that cultures or countries have they give people access to have an opportunity to do certain jobs. Like when I came out of school for business management, I was like, all right, where's all the jobs where I'm going to manage people? But that's not how it works. You kind of have to start at the bottom and kind of work your way up because nobody's going to hire somebody fresh out of school to start managing tons of people because they don't have the experience. They companies usually want people who have at least like 5 years of experience before they start managing people. So, do you find it the same way in where you're at?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree that uh, what matters more is, as you say, experience, because, yeah, I mean, you can learn the concepts, but what matters is what you do with it. Is that information is useless without actually, using it in a concrete manner. Um, and as long as you don't use it in a business environment, we don't know if you can do it or not. So you can have maybe you've learned everything about project management. Awesome. But actually, have you managed a project? Have you used it in a way? Do you know like common pitfalls, like how to manage people? Because it comes down to, what I was saying before, a business at the end is a is a group of people. So it's about as much managing them and understanding what they want and how to deal with them than it is about knowing about business strategy or whatever you've learned in school. Um, so yeah, I think experience is always more valuable. And and yeah, I mean, I keep on telling people to be curious and go and learn and read. Um, Last year, I started teaching at university, and but obviously, I mean, my advice was, look, I'm going to teach you a bunch of stuff and I will tell you what I know. But you should be curious. You should be going and reading a lot and or reading or watching videos or listening to podcasts or whatever you feel works for you. But you need this curiosity to continuously develop your skills and develop your knowledge about something. And I use the example I said, look, when I started working, I wasn't an expert in anything. I was fresh out of school. I had learned a bunch of stuff, but I knew nothing. And then a few years later, well, I knew a few more things, and now I know many more things. But I've learned a lot, and I continue to learn, and I continue to read, and I continue to write, and I do things to continue to develop my skills. Uh, so the problem is if you when people see school as I go there to learn and then I stop learning and I get a degree and then I stop working, but it doesn't work that way. You learn the basics that will allow you to access a job where you will learn more in order, as you say, to get to another level. But it's a combination of all this knowledge and skills that make you valuable or not.
Yeah, and I think that if somebody has at least some kind of work ethic, then that can be increased over time. But as we're just explaining, you can have all the education and knowledge in the world, but if you don't know how to apply any of that, if you have a very poor work ethic, then you're not going to perform very well. And also, just like what we were talking about earlier, as far as like communication wise, if you don't know how to communicate with people or work in teams, then you're probably going to struggle as a business owner, business manager, whatever you choose to do. It's not going to be very easy for you to accomplish any kind of goals or achieve any kind of level of status. You know, if you want to be CEO or president of some company one day, I mean, there are some people who might be socially awkward, but are like killing it within their sector. But it's sometimes it can be difficult to achieve those positions. I know people who are super smart. I'm in the engineering field, and there's people I work with who they don't have the best social skills, but, they're still able to perform well because it's a more isolated work that we do. But, yeah, it could be difficult, I could see, for somebody whose social skills are not the greatest and they're trying to strive to be in certain positions. You have to be able to interview well, and sometimes people struggle with that, so that might be a, stopping gap for them to get to where they wanna go.
Mm. Yeah, no, I used the example I think a few months ago. I was saying, well, look, if knowledge was power, then all the PhDs and all these guys would rule the world, right? Is that all the smart people that all the scientists, astronomers, and the NASA engineers, they would be at the top. Actually, it's not because people that are actually ruling, people that are CEOs, they're not the smartest. They just know how to manage people. They know how to navigate situations. They know how to manage their stress. So it's not like, it's a different kind of smart. But knowledge is my argument was that knowledge is not actually power. It's applied knowledge is power. Is applied skills, is what you know is useful at one point in time. This is the real power, to use the right thing. But overall knowledge, it's nothing. It's your book, your your search engine, your Google, but doesn't make you powerful or doesn't give you any like way to make any decisions.
Yeah, and I have no idea what the actual definition of skill is, but you have
Mm,
definitely brought it to my attention to think that the definition of skill really should be the application of knowledge because you
mm,
have to know what something is. And so let's say if you're an electrician, you have to have the knowledge to be able to do things and then be able to actually do it. And so
mm.
that's your skill. Your skill is applying the knowledge that you actually have. So that's a very, very cool way to think about that. So when you're in Spain, you have all of these new adventures that you're taking upon yourself as an entrepreneur. What are some good and bad things that have happened to you to where you're like, oh man, I'm glad I did this, or shoot, I should not have done that.
Um, I mean, overall, to go into entrepreneurship was cool, was the right choice. But obviously, um, the grass is always greener on the other side. So I always thought, oh yeah, it's gonna be awesome. The reality is that it takes time. It takes long hours before things actually start to move. So the first few months were a mix of you're motivated, but at the same time you're like, why am I working 12 hours a day to earn peanuts? I should get a job. So it was mixed emotions, and then you get your first wins, and and you learn along the way is that you learn how to pitch better to clients. You learn, how to deal with people, how to deal with the various things that come. Is it, developing the business, managing it at the same time, managing your cash flow as a business. So you learn a few things, sometimes the hard way. Uh, you know, um, Sometimes you have a client and you feel shouldn't take this client on because I feel he's not going to pay me. And then, guess what? He's not paying you. So stuff like that, uh, that you learn. And now, now I'm much better at treating people. I'm like, okay, actually this is going to be a headache. Um, this, I shouldn't focus on that. There is very, very little value. Um, and so you learn very quickly all these things. Um, and sometimes you learn also, I mean, recently I've learned that sometimes there's nothing you can do, is that you would like to work with these people and then that person doesn't like you.
Mhm.
And then you're like, well, fuck it. What am I gonna do? Is that would have been a great contract, would have been great everything. Then it's people. Um, and and so you look back and you're like, oh, what should I have done differently? And then sometimes you realize, well, nothing. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah, and I was actually making a post about that on social media the other day about just being unapologetically yourself. Like
Mm,
if people don't like you, then that's on them. You know, you like you, so it's not your fault that how you carry yourself, how you carry your business is not in their favor or they don't see it as beneficial to them or they're like I just don't like you as you said with the people from the Netherlands just like yeah I just don't like you so that's
yeah,
not your fault you just kind of do what you want to do and it is what it is.
yeah. I think it's obviously sometimes it can hit your self-confidence, but then you need to remind yourself, okay, well, I've done all these things and I've worked with all these people, so this is an outlier. So you need to learn to get constructive feedback and learn how to improve in some areas. Also, being able to discard when doesn't make sense what you're being told, And I had once that I wasn't dynamic enough, and I was like, what does it mean? Uh, well, you're not you don't feel very excited when you talk. I'm like, I don't know. Is it? I think about the words I'm using, and I'm structured, and so I have other qualities. So of course, maybe I'm not meant to be TEDx things or animate a crowd, but that's fine. Um, so that's why sometimes you need to just try to triage a bit the things that you feel are useful and constructive to become better as an individual in your job or just normally, and stuff where you feel, okay, this doesn't make sense, or this person, I don't know what their problem is. So you're like, okay, let's discard this. Because also sometimes the feedback or whatever you're being told, they're like, yeah, but it means I would have to change in a way that I will lose, some other qualities. Um, but yeah, you learn over time to listen to feedback and make, yeah, as I said, discard some stuff and take the rest.
Yeah, as you were alluding to, like you should never change who you are just to appease some people when it comes to make a transaction because you might end up, you know, forgetting to be that way, or you might
Mm,
end up just not being able to perform the way that you want to. If somebody was, saying, "Well, you don't seem happy enough to work with us," it's like, well, if you just tried to be all bubbly and joyful all the time, you might end up performing worse because you're acting a way that you're not used to acting. I think I can be a very dynamic person, but I also don't get too upset or too frustrated because I know that that really impacts me. I know of like one time at my current job that I was like super upset and frustrated, and I almost quit that day. But I just kind of calmed myself down and just thought like, why are you upset? Just think
mm.
about really why you're upset, and is it that big of a deal? And I don't get too rowdy or rah-rah when it comes to work because I know that doing those types of things can be detrimental to either my focus or just my energy in general. So it's like, I could work with somebody with your personality because I know what I'm gonna get from you. Like, if somebody's too dynamic, you're like, "Who's gonna come in today?" They feel like they have, like, split personalities or something like that, so
Yeah, exactly. I think it depends. I mean, what I do is I manage projects, I develop strategies. I'm not selling cars, so I don't need to be hey man, how are you? It's not me because it doesn't match what I do day to day. What I do day to day is sometimes things go wrong, super wrong, and need to manage. I need to keep calm. So that's the my personality kind of has been developed in function of what I do and what I need to do. Um, and if at one specific moment I need to be like all bubbly, well, it's not going to work because most of the time I can't be like this because uh, managing tense situation, I can't be the one all excited and all like nervous because otherwise it gets everybody nervous. And actually, no, when you manage a very complex project, people look to you as a person that is very calm in the situation. Things go bad, we're losing millions, we're, I don't know, like tech is behind, everything is going bad, but you're like, okay, this is what we're gonna do.
mm.
These are the solutions. So people look to you as a calm person, not the bubbly, whatever. So it also depends on what you do, and as you say, managing your emotions. And these are skills that maybe if you're super bubbly, you're not able to do that because you're expressing too much your emotions, which is fantastic for some stuff. And depending on what you do, it's terrible. As I said, I'm in a very complex thing and tight deadline, and I don't need someone. all like nervous in the room. This is going to be detrimental to the whole project. Um, so yeah, I mean, I keep on learning, and it keeps in its interesting journey. Obviously, it's not over. I'm saying I still have to work for quite a few years. Um, but now I also, as I said, I'm I'm more and more. I know like the clients I want to work with, the projects I want to do, um, and even when they're big, and I'm like, well, actually, this looks like it's not gonna work, or it's gonna be a pain, and I'm like, look, I don't want to do this for the next 6 months, year. It's gonna be toxic. It's gonna affect my well-being, um, and I'm running my business not to have this kind of mess. I don't want to wake up in the morning and be like, oh shit, I have a call with this guy at 9 and it's gonna be a pain.
Yeah, and I think that is a big thing for people as far as like their mental state, when you wake up in the morning and you have to go do your daily job or whatever it is, your career, your business, are you happy? And if you're not happy, then try to find a way to either change what's going on around you or to just change careers or something because that it affects everything. If whether you're not eating healthy, you're not, exercising, or you're not just living a life with friends or family, whatever it is, just find a different way to handle your life because if you're not doing those kinds of things that make you happy because of your job is just affecting all that, then there's really no point of doing it. There's too many ways to make money to be
Mm.
upset about your current state in life. So, I would definitely suggest people just find a different way. But it's almost time to start wrapping this up. What I would I would say, like, what's your best advice that you would like to give to people as far as running a business or just in general that you've probably received over time?
Yeah, well, I think it's linked to what you exactly just said, is that for me, life is too short to do something you don't like because you're going to work for many years. Um, so just find something that you think you like most of the days. Also, my advice is that you're not going to love your job. There is no job you're going to love every single day, but find something that you will like most days. Um, because yeah, and keep on learning, keep on be curious about who- the job you do, but like more broadly, because it's always helpful. There's no, I know everything about what I do. It's impossible. Like every job is changing all the time. So yeah, do something you love, keep on learning, because life is too short, and there's, as you say, it's like, what are you aiming for retirement? This is not an aim. Like you're gonna be, maybe you have a cancer in 5 years, or I don't know. Like, just enjoy what you do now, because otherwise, what the point of living? It's very philosophical, but yeah, this is how I think.
That's fantastic. I 100% agree with all of that. So if you could just go ahead and give everybody like your info, whether you have socials or websites or contact email, whatever.
Yeah, sure. So on fintechreview.net, you will find everything I do around fintech. I have a newsletter as well, weekly newsletter where people can read about my ramblings about fintech. Where I'm the most active is on LinkedIn, where people can find me, Tristan Pelloux, and they will find the details of Fintech Review, this business around fintech, and Strategwhy, all the stuff I do around strategy. I just released uh, an ebook on uh, saying, like, my ebook is just 20 odd pages about how having a great idea doesn't matter. What matters is the execution. And this is something I'm very passionate about. So I go a bit about why having a great idea doesn't matter. So using a few examples of businesses that could have been great, but actually they're not, because the execution uh, was uh, was bad. So it's just to destroy a bit the myth that you have a great idea and then tada. actually it's not true. Is that what matters is what you do. It's a grinding as an entrepreneur. Maybe tomorrow you have a great idea. What's going to matter is how you wake up and what you do in the next 1,000 days after that, not just the days that you have the idea. So anyway, I just released this book and you will find it through my LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us about your different experiences from being in London and working in the financial space to starting your own business and doing all these kinds of things. It's been fantastic learning about all your experiences, man.
Thanks, Jackson. Was a great chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.